starting it off, we're going to talk about fingerings. We've heard that many kids either have wrong fingerings or poor understanding of use of the half hole or the fork tip. So, Brian, start us off. Tell us what you would teach for fingerings.
Yeah, thank you. So when I take a private student who's only learned in band or had no private lessons at all, there are more often than not issues with the proper use of the half hole and also with forked F. But the half hole is really number one for me because most of these kids in band class or on their own want to use the back octave with it. Or they don't use it at all. They try to play half hole D with all the fingers down and the back octave. They don't know to use it at all. And that's very dangerous for the oboe, actually, because it can force condensation into the octave vent, the first octave vent. And once you train an instrument to have water in the octave keys, they're pretty much done. I mean, they're going to do that all the time. It's going to direct the water stream to go there. It trains it. Okay, so I always have to correct the half hole first. So I think it's essential for band directors when they're working with their beginning oboe players to really keep an eye on them to make sure that they're using the half hole properly. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, here's an oboe here. I'm talking about this key right here. This is the half hole key. It's attached to the B key. This is the B, all right? So this is the half hole, and it is used for middle D, D flat, or E flat, okay? It must be used with these. It's not optional. This is the fingering for it. So be sure that your kids also have a really good fingering chart. I really like the one made by Fox Products. It's called Let's Play Oboe, and that has a really clear, excellent fingering chart in it. All right, and so what I would suggest is please make sure your kids know the proper use of this half hole here, and that they're also not kind of rolling off it like this, that they really do need to slide their finger down onto this plate. And keep an eye on their back finger, the thumb here. Do not use it with the octave key, all right? That's another habit that kids get into early. And the thing about when you're starting an instrument, the very first things you're playing on there are being imprinted on your brain. So it's very hard to untrain a student once they've learned an incorrect fingering, because that's where their muscle memory goes. The same goes with the F. The fingering for F on the oboe is E plus this lever. This could be confusing for young students who are switching from saxophone or flute, where this is F, right? And then F sharp is this. This is F sharp on the oboe. So this is where the fingering chart comes in handy. Your fingering chart is going to offer your student alternate fingerings. We need to be very careful that the kids are using the real fingering for it and not saying, oh, but this fingering over here looks easier. I want to use that one. Make sure that they know the real fingering for the note. So F is this, and then forked F is used when you're going to or from the C sharp, the D, or the E flat. And that is on an oboe like this, our basic oboe, that doesn't have a left hand F. Okay, this modified conservatory oboe, which most of your kids are going to have in band class, it's most likely that your school will own something like this, which is a modified conservatory instrument. It doesn't have all the keys on it, as opposed to this professional level Larray instrument, which is a full conservatory, has all the keys, including a left F. If your school is lucky enough to own an instrument like this, make sure that your kids understand that they can use this left key here and not play the fork all the time, that the F, the left F, pushes down this F lever for them so that they can go from their D to the F, E flat, C sharp. So those are the two main points that I have trouble with new students. Half whole, and then if they have the left F, knowing when to properly use it, and the proper F fingering. Don't let them think that forked F is the real F fingering. Some of them come to me like that too. They only know this. So it's really important that you take the time as the band director to really study a fingering chart. Get a tutorial. Make sure that your kids are learning up front the proper fingerings for the oboe, because they're going to imprint that, and it's going to be really, really hard for them to unlearn it. So those are my two main things.
Thank you, Brian. Brent, you got anything to add to that?
A few things. Now that I'm thinking back, my very first band director spent at least a week with me working alone after school for 30-minute lessons, going through the material that we had covered, the 6 months or so before, to get me caught up. And again, all of these fingerings we're talking about came up. And my first oboe didn't have a left-hand F. It just had I just had the option of fourth F or the natural F with no third additional left F. And even though I both, of course, forked F was the one that I remember the most, because most band music is written in B flat and E flat major. You have more of an opportunity to use forked F or to be lazy and to use that, because the music that you're playing is more conducive to going from, like Brian was saying, having so many fingers down on the instrument, and it's easier to go from E flat to a forked F than it is from an E flat to sliding to an F that's a natural F, etc. So that was a big part of my challenge, was realizing that the music that I was forced to play was more advanced than the instrument that I had at the time. And as music progressed into more oboe-centric music, sonatas and concertos, and my oboe got better, in terms of I actually bought my own at that point, I really had to train myself to use the left F. But again, I was really excited too, because I had been wanting an instrument that was a much more professional grade instrument, and I wanted to use these keys. But I think for general beginning students that maybe do not have access to an instrument like this, really taking the time to spend with the student before they ever come to class with an instrument, to teach them both, show them why both work, show them when to use both, and give them etudes and exercises, even if you write them in your own hand, to teach them why. So that's, I guess, my addition to what you had mentioned, Brian.